Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Chase Stu.
And today we are talking about Captain Marvel. Directed by Anna Boden and Ryan Fleck, and written by Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, and I may pronounce this name wrong, Geneva Robertson Dworet. From a story by Nicole Perlman, Meg LaFauve, Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, and Geneva Robertson Dworet. And starring Brie Larson, Samuel L. Jackson, Ben Mendelsohn, Jude Law, Gemma Chan, Clark Gregg, and Annette Bening, who, by the way, I completely forgot was in this movie.
I did too.
I actually have not watched this movie from beginning to end since I saw it in the theater. I feel like that's a common thing I say on this podcast. But there's, some Marvel movies I have watched many times, and just this one's not one of them, which I guess kind of speaks to the quality of the film. I actually think it's a pretty good movie. I remember enjoying it when I saw it in the theater, and I enjoyed it watching it today, but for whatever reason, I just never feel like popping this one in to watch it. But how did you feel about it when you saw it first time?
First time I saw it, I really liked it, but I think that was because of one, we were in the peak of superhero.
Yeah, in between Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah. So it didn't get any higher than that.
Very true.
And in that Marvel drunken phase where right. Everything they do is the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right.
Yeah. So I really liked it when it first came out, and the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't really remember much of the movie. It could I remember liking it, but I don't remember much.
Yeah.
And people were hating on it, and I was defending. I was like, it's not that bad. And then I couldn't really tell them why it wasn't that bad. I was like, maybe I should watch this movie again. So
that's kind of how I felt.
And of course I was going to watch it again because it's a superhero movie.
Sure, of course.
Or a Marvel one at that. So, and I got the 4K. My wife loves this movie. She loves this movie.
Nice.
I got the 4K and I watched it again. I was like, yeah, it's not as good as I remember. This is probably the fifth time that I've watched this movie.
Wow. Okay. And
that's only because I go through the MCU quite a bit. So I'm never in the mood to pop in Captain Marvel. I usually watch it because it's next up in the rotation. in the rotation. And yeah, all the subsequent times that I've watched it, I was like, yeah, not feeling it.
Interesting.
And the thing is, like, to me, the movie doesn't explore its theme deep enough, which is self-identification. It doesn't explore that deep enough, and the plot is really thin, which makes for a very vanilla movie.
Gotcha. Yeah.
That being said, this is one of the best looking Marvel movies that they've made.
Yeah.
The CGI in this movie is amazing. And I think that added to the allure of watching the movie for the first time.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So like I said, I've only seen this twice now. We did have it on, like, some family came to our house and they chose to watch this movie, and I didn't really watch it with them, but I kind of came in for the third act. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, oh yeah, that's pretty good. But other than that, that was the only time I rewatched it. And so this was the first time I sat down and watched it from beginning to end. And like I said, I actually, I found myself enjoying it. I thought it was actually pretty good. But you do have a point that the plot is not super complex by any means. Mm-hmm. And you might be right about them not exploring the themes enough. But I still find it entertaining. And I do agree with you that the CGI looks really good. And I really like the look of Captain Marvel in the final act when she finally fully gets her powers basically and everything.
Yeah, I do.
That was visualized really, really well.
Yeah.
I do have some nitpicks about it. I really like that it's set in the 90s, although if there wasn't a Blockbuster Video in the beginning and just some of the music choices,
you wouldn't know.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell that it was the 90s, aside from the fact that nobody really pulls out like a cell phone. But I do like that it's kind of the prequel, although I really, one of my least favorite things about this movie is I know what you're going to say. Yeah, you probably do. Is the reveal, I guess you could say, of how Nick Fury got his eye patch and scar.
Yes, this movie does some things that I was not happy about, even in my first viewing
Right.
when I really liked it. That's one of them. Um, Also, the Avengers being named after her
Yeah.
didn't. It's not the fact that they were named after her. It was definitely 100% a retcon because there's no allusion to her being the source of the name of the Avengers at all before this movie. So it's definitely an aspect that was just shoehorned into the universe just for the sake of it, and I really didn't like that.
Yeah. I don't hate that because I don't think, aside from Captain America, the first Avenger being titled the First Avenger, I don't think there's anything in the movies that kind of explains where they got the name from for the Avengers Initiative. And so I'm okay with it, but it is kind of silly that it was originally called the Protectors Initiative, and then he sees the name on the plane and he's like, "Oh, Avengers Initiative, that's better."
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't love that, but I don't hate it either. But I do feel like it almost does kind of take away from Steve Rogers, since he is Captain America, the First Avenger.
The First Avenger, yeah.
So the fact that it was named after Carol Danvers rather than the First Avenger just is kind of weird to me.
It should have been Captain America. His one of his monikers or nicknames should have been, the Avenger or whatever.
Right? Yeah. I would have liked that more, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's just a couple of I feel like there's a couple of plot holes, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention enough. That does tend to happen sometimes for me. But she first meets Nick Fury after she crash lands on Earth, and then she escapes from him. And next time she sees him, she calls him Fury, and I'm like, maybe he did introduce himself to her when he first arrives, but I don't remember him ever saying his name, and so it just felt like she knew things about him already that she shouldn't have known yet. Stuff like that. Like there was maybe a deleted scene or something. But again, I might have just not been. He might have said his name and I just missed it.
I think he did.
Yeah, he probably did. He probably said he was Agent Fury or something. But
yeah.
One thing we skipped right over, we got to talk about, is this was the first movie released after Stan Lee died. And so the Marvel Studios logo in the beginning is all Stan Lee. And seeing that in the theater, I really, really enjoyed seeing that in the theater. I know there's some contention about how much Stan Lee, maybe doesn't deserve all the credit that he got for certain things. But I still think he was, you can't deny that he was influential into the Marvel comics and maybe comics in general. And so I really like that they put him into the Marvel Studios logo in the beginning.
There is some contention, because you got Steve Ditko, Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
They were all very, very much very big influences on the Marvel universe and the Marvel brand.
And probably don't get as much credit as they should.
Yeah. I think in recent years, Jack Kirby has gotten a little bit more credit than what he has gotten before.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not the first time that's happened, especially in the comic book world. You could talk about Bob Kane and Bill Finger with Batman.
Yeah.
Bob Kane gets all the credit, but Bill Finger, he if we're being honest, he really created the character.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But no, I agree. It was very nice to see that tribute, because I had honestly forgotten about it until I watched this movie again. And I remembered watching it in the theater, and there was uproarious applause in the theater.
Yeah. I also liked his cameo on the train where I think there's a reason they had his face covered. I think he was he might have been sick, or I don't know, but I like that he's reading the Mallrats screenplay, and practicing his line. I thought that was pretty great since it's 1995. Although I think Mallrats came out in 95, so I feel like he would have shot that.
He would have
already
filmed it.
How do you feel about Jude Law?
Wasted casting.
Jan Rog. Really?
Yeah, Jude Law is a phenomenal actor, and he's good in this movie. But if you're gonna get Jude Law to play the villain in your movie, like he's like you got to make him memorable.
Right.
There's a movie, an animated movie, Rise of the Guardians. He's the villain in Rise of the Guardians. He's the boogeyman. He's so good as the boogeyman. Oh my god. And you know, watching that and then watching this, it's like, dude, I know you could turn it up. And don't get me wrong, I know that they're trying to subvert expectations. I think that this was, at least for nerds, we already knew that he was going to be the real bad guy. At least I did, because I remember that he was a pink skin Kree.
Uh-huh.
And to my knowledge, pink skin Kree are bad.
Okay.
But giving the movie the benefit of the doubt, I know that he was, he was supposed to be playing a good guy in the beginning and then revealed to be the bad guy. But even when he was the good guy, it just felt like, I don't say he was phoning it in, because he's still good, but there's nothing special about his performance at all.
Yeah.
You're thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
I see the gears turning.
I think he does a really good job. He's very charismatic in the beginning. And I didn't know about Kree and Skrulls. I was vaguely familiar with Skrulls and thought they were bad guys. So the reveal that Jude Law was the actual villain of the movie was a surprise to me. I also don't know very much about Captain Marvel. Like, the only thing I think I knew about Captain Marvel going into this movie was that her and Rogue Rogue stole her powers,
Yeah.
I was very unfamiliar with a lot of these characters and everything. So that was kind of a surprise to me. And there's a deleted scene actually that I almost wish had been left in the movie, where it comes after the reveal that he is the bad guy, but he goes to see the Supreme Intelligence, I think they call it, which in the movie is said that when you go see the Supreme Intelligence, they take the form of who you most admire.
Right.
And so when Carol goes, she sees Lawson, played by Annette Bening, even though she doesn't know who that is, because she doesn't remember anything from Earth. So there's a deleted scene where Jude Law goes to the Supreme Intelligence, and the Supreme Intelligence takes the form of Jude Law, because he's like, he loves himself the most, admires himself the most. And his performance, it's a deleted scene, and it's the only one I've watched. I just watched it right before we started recording. His performance as the Supreme Intelligence is really good, and he turns it up a little bit in that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the main reason why I kind of wish they had left that in there.
Yeah.
But so to an extent, I agree with you. I guess his performance is nothing special. Like, I don't remember seeing this movie and going, man, Jude Law was amazing in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I thought he was adequate. And I like the fact that they don't kill him. So I'm hoping maybe we'll see him again. I don't think we're going to see him in the Marvels, but there's the option, I guess, for his character to come back.
I don't know if I would quite say adequate. I'd say acceptable. He's definitely acceptable.
I think I like his performance more than you do.
I think that's for sure. To me, there's a bit to be desired. And I think that might be on the director, because the director's job is to bring the best out of the actor.
Right.
Because we've seen countless movies with phenomenal actors in roles that they should not be in, or roles that just don't do it for us. And this is one of those casualties.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. That's a fair argument. I think it works. I think once the reveal happens, he could turn it up a notch and be a little bit more villainous. And the part where he throws down his gun at the end and tells Carol, like, prove to me that you finally have control over your emotions. And she just shoots him with her like photon blast or whatever. Yeah. I saw that coming a mile away. That was so that was not that funny really, because you knew it was coming.
Right.
I never once disliked Jude Law while I was watching this movie. I don't know. I think he's actually pretty good. So
I also felt that they could have played up their relationship a little bit more. They have a a
Mentor mentee.
yeah, mentor mentee type relationship, and I felt that they could have played that up a little bit more, make it kind of like a big brother little sister relationship.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we get a little bit of that in the beginning, but I felt like through their phone conversations they could have
Yes.
played that up a little bit more, maybe showed one or two flashback scenes to kind of further develop that relationship, because when you find out that he's the villain and he's betrayed her, it to me it doesn't have any emotional weight. I kind of don't care.
Right. I was going to say, yeah, you're 100% correct. I think if they had played up that relationship a little bit better, made them feel closer than they actually were, that reveal would have had a lot more emotional impact when you find out that he's actually the bad guy. This big brother character who has been like her protector and stuff is actually the bad guy. It would have been more of a gut punch. And you're right, it doesn't have that impact.
Yeah.
And so I don't necessarily attribute that to his acting. I would attribute that to either the writing or the directing, like you said.
Yeah.
I do kind of wish there was more of that, so that way the reveal would be more impactful and be harder on Carol to have to fight him and everything,
Mm-hmm. And it that's one of the many frustrating things about this movie, because I feel like that throughout almost the entirety of the movie. Like, there is a really great movie inside of this movie.
Yeah.
And it's just scratching the surface of acceptable. And again, I used to when I first saw it, I really liked it, but like I said, I think I had those Marvel rose-colored glasses on.
Yeah.
And then when I watched it again for the second time, I really saw it for the movie that it really was.
Yeah.
And like I said at the beginning, I really think they should have played up the themes of self-identification, giving Carol more character development, because a lot of people were saying that Brie Larson was miscast, and I wouldn't necessarily say that she was miscast, because I do like her as an actress.
Yeah.
But she's not given enough to work with, and then all the subsequent times we see her is like for 2 minutes at a time.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So it's I really think Brie Larson gets a lot of undeserved hate for the work that somebody else didn't put in.
Right, I agree.
She's doing the best she can with what she's been given.
Right.
And that's all you can ask from an actor.
Yeah. And there's times where I don't totally love her character either. It has nothing to do with Brie Larson, I don't think. I think it's more the way it's written. Just the way
it's actually the character of Captain Marvel. She's unlikable in the comics.
Gotcha. So in that case, I guess it's comic accurate. She just can kind of come across as like arrogant, I guess. And maybe that's a little bit of Jude Law's character rubbing off on her and stuff, but because there's that line where he says, Samuel Jackson is like, so you're like a race of super warriors. She's like, super warrior heroes, or whatever. And it's just like, you're like, okay.
Yeah, she's like that in the comics, but I think in that arrogance, there is no motivation. Well, I don't say there's no motivation. There's some motivation for her arrogance, because we see in the flashback scenes, which were very generic. Like, oh, you're not good enough. You're this, you're that. It's like, okay, we've seen that before.
Right,
but
right.
Again, I think they should have played up that kind of stuff a lot more in order for us to really care about this character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about with Jude Law's character and it not having that emotional impact, she is upset for about 2 seconds that Jude Law's character lied to her. And after that, she has no problem fighting him or anything like that. Whereas if they had that closer relationship, it could have been a much bigger conflict of her not wanting to have to fight her essential, basically her family, but feeling like everything she knew is a lie. And, so she just kind of moves on from it pretty quickly. It seems like it anyway to me.
No, I agree. She definitely moves on from it pretty quickly. And I think that's because the movie has to get on with it. Not a whole lot is happening in this movie. There's a little bit of action in the beginning of the movie when before she comes to Earth. And then there's the chase scene when she's chasing the scroll throughout the city. But then a lot of the movie is very investigative, which I'm on board with. It's just that in that investigative stuff, you gotta really punch it up on the emotion. If you're not gonna have action, you gotta have character development, emotion, thematic presence, something. And there's just not a whole lot of it. It's just very, I don't know. It's just very surface level. It's not. It's not in depth enough for me when it comes to the non-action stuff.
Right.
And there's a lot of non-action in this movie.
Yeah, you make very good points. Actually, these are things that I guess I didn't really think about. On a surface level, I enjoyed the film, but as we break it down and start to dig a little deeper, I realized that it does have some stuff that's kind of missing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so yeah, you make
you know what it points. Feels like? It feels like an early draft. It feels like this movie could have benefited from another draft. It's underwritten.
Yeah, could be.
And before we started recording, we were talking about Secret Invasion, how some people aren't liking it. I personally love it because it does those things that I was saying that this movie should do. There's not a whole lot of action in that show.
Right.
It's not super, it is plot driven, but within that plot, there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversations, but there's a lot of discovering why characters are doing what they're doing without getting into any spoilers. We find out some things about Nick Fury. We find out some things about some other characters, but all of that kind of happens through conversation and not necessarily action scenes.
Right.
And I like that because it is so against what the superhero genre is right now, which is very lighthearted and pretty much, I don't say every movie, but most superhero movies that are coming out now feel like Saturday morning cartoons. And
sure.
The crazy thing about it is that I called this like maybe 2 years ago after, it was a little bit more than two years ago. I think it was like when the pandemic started or right after the pandemic started. I was like, I'm afraid for superhero movies because people were very much on the Zack Snyder hate train. This was before Zack Snyder's Justice League came out. And people are still on that hate train, even though it's over and done with.
Right,
people just won't let it go on both ends of the spectrum, both Snyder fans and Snyder haters. And then we had James Gunn come out with the Suicide Squad sequel / reboot, and it underperformed at the box office, but like critics, like people loved it.
Yeah.
And it was, it was more in that lighter tone. And then everything that came out, I won't say everything that came out, but most of the stuff that came out in phase 4 of Marvel was in that lighter tone. And I was like, I'm not feeling the way this is going. Like, I feel like people have gotten so, for lack of a better word, marvelized that the MCU and maybe superhero movies might be imploding on themselves. Because Marvel had hit after hit after hit. That's because they were doing what worked.
Right.
And now I feel like they're overcompensating for that. You're like, oh, you like the light superhero movies? Well, we're gonna give you more jokes. We're gonna give you over designed costumes. Like, no. Slow your roll. Yeah, I'm sorry. I went on that little tangent.
No, that's okay.
I can't even remember what the point I was making was.
I forget what the point was either.
Oh, how Secret Invasion kind of correlates with this movie as far as not only the plot, but the just how Secret Invasion is to me is a very well written show without a lot of plot. And while this movie does not have a whole lot of plot, it feels underwritten.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. How do you feel about, Nick Fury being kind of the second lead in the film and his, the young Nick Fury? He's not the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. yet. He still has, both eyes.
I like it. He's a little too happy.
Yeah.
just a tad bit too happy for my Nick Fury, but I don't hate it. I'm not coming at his portrayal with the pitchforks and torches
Right.
and stuff. So, but he's a tad too happy. But I also understand that they wanted to give us a different Nick Fury. This is Nick Fury 13 years before the events of Iron Man. So
Right.
he'd be a lot different.
Yeah. And I get that
So
too.
I get it. Yeah.
I don't mind the younger Nick Fury, and he is happier. It goes a little too far, in my opinion, when he meets the cat.
Meets the cat. Yeah.
I don't recognize that Nick Fury at all. And I understand why they did that. It was to kind of set up the whole thing with the Flurkin, but also to give him the scratch on the eye and all that stuff. But I don't feel like he had to go just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs over that cat. It was a little weird.
No, I agree. They definitely overdid it with the cat. And speaking of the cat, we touched on a little bit, but since we may as well go right into it. How he loses his eye is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
It is so disrespectful to the character of Nick Fury that's how he loses his eye.
Yeah, I agree.
That should have had some emotional weight to it. That should have been an epic moment,
right?
when he loses his eye,
and I realize,
to have it regulated to an alien cat scratching it, it's like, come on, man.
and I guess I realized they were trying to subvert expectations, but at the same time, as soon as he starts gushing over the cat, it's going to be the cat that's going to scratch his eye. So it just kind of, I hated that as well, honestly. That's like my least favorite part of the movie. I think Samuel L. Jackson does a good job. I actually think they de-aged him a little bit, and he looks really good. Coulson does not look great. Coulson looks kind of plasticky.
Yeah, he does.
But Samuel L. Jackson looks pretty good. And so I like that he's in this movie. I feel like there should have been something, because we're not going to ever see, at least I don't think we are, the years between this movie and Avengers. So I feel like something should have kind of happened that made him a little bit more of the kind of harder type of person that he is in the later, in how we know Nick Fury.
They show a little bit of that in Secret Invasion.
Okay, all right. So
a little bit
of it.
A tiny bit.
Right, okay. How do you feel about Ben Mendelsohn as Talos or Talos, however you say it?
I like Talos.
Yeah.
I'm a Ben Mendelsohn fan. I like
Me too.
Ben Mendelsohn.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen him in anything that I didn't like him in. As the movie progresses, I like him more. I like him more in the second half of the movie than I do in the first half of the movie. But I think the best version of him is in Secret Invasion.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying not to talk about it too much because you haven't seen it, but you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah.
Especially since based on the conversation that we're having now, you'll understand why I like him more in Secret Invasion than this.
Yeah, as of this recording, I've only seen the first episode, and 4 have been released so far. So by the time this episode comes out, hopefully I'll be caught up.
Yeah.
I just haven't had the time just yet to sit down and really, really watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But I like Ben Mendelsohn a lot too. I like he's a fun actor to watch. He's also one of the he's on that list of actors who has done a DC movie and a Marvel movie now. So he's good in pretty much everything he does.
I think Dark Knight Rises was the first thing I had seen him.
Ever seen him in?
Yeah.
I think the first thing I ever saw him in was a movie called Animal Kingdom, which was an Australian film about like a crime family in Australia, obviously. And he plays kind of like the eldest son, I think. And he's really good in it.
Didn't they make a TV show?
Yeah. It got adapted into they're an American family, I think, on the TV show, but it did get it adapted into a TV show. Yeah. Which I never saw, but the movie was amazing.
I heard the show was pretty good too.
Yeah. I might have to check it out. How do you feel about the score of this film?
Okay. So about the score. If you had asked me a year ago what I thought about the score, I would have told you I couldn't tell you. I don't remember it.
Right.
And then I made a playlist of like all the Marvel themes, and I got to Captain Marvel. I was like, yo, this is really good. And then watching this movie, I was like, yo, this score is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like this score. I really like Captain Marvel's theme,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's in a different movie. I especially like it in Endgame when she shows up and you hear her theme playing in the background. That was an awesome moment. But yeah, I really like this score.
Yeah, I agree.
Way more than I ever thought I would.
You did. Yeah. I feel the same way. I watched, before rewatching it today, I've had this soundtrack on my phone pretty much since it came out.
Since the movie came out, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I've listened to like, I thought only one track was good. It was like I just didn't really. It was the same thing. I couldn't remember the music. I thought it was probably very generic. I just didn't. It didn't stand out to me. But watching it today, it's like in the very beginning, I was like, "Dang, this music's pretty good." And that was even before like her theme really came out and everything. And then towards the end when like it's the Captain Marvel theme, it was just it's an underappreciated score, I think.
I've been revisiting the scores of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and some of my favorite ones are from movies that you wouldn't even think about. Like, I think Iron Man 3 is a top 5 MCU score.
Nice.
Like, I love that score. This one is really, really good as well. Thor: The Dark World.
Mm-hmm.
You can say what you want about the movie, but that score, I like that score.
Good stuff.
Good stuff.
I really like. So I've got the movie playing here, and it's been playing. I started it before we started recording, and it's the scene where she's been taken by Jude Law, and they are kind of accessing her memory, or at least hooked her up so she could talk to the Supreme Intelligence.
You and I are in the same scene. I might be a little bit ahead of you. And
so we're getting some of those flashbacks you were talking about that are very kind of generic. But I love when she starts to basically beef up her powers.
Power up.
And I know I'm going to pronounce his name wrong because I can never remember how it's pronounced, but Jamon Hunsu is like, like the camera moves in on him and he's like, she's trying to break free. Like you get the moment of like, oh, here comes, it's like, it's kind of a cool pump up moment. And this movie does that stuff pretty well. Mm-hmm. It has kind of the big hero moments. It's just the stories, like you said, is not maybe quite all there, but her breaking out of that is pretty awesome, I thought.
And don't get me wrong, I get it because they want to make you earn the her being
her big moment,
full Captain Marvel, and I get that, and I love movies that do that, but. Again, you gotta. If you're not gonna give us action, you gotta give us emotion.
Right.
You can't not give us that.
Yeah.
And they just didn't do that. So by the time she, was fully marveled out, I was happy that we were seeing it, but I really didn't. I was checked out.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. Yeah. And I think even if you do give, like you said, if you're not going to give us action, you got to give us emotion. I think even if you do give us action, you got to give us emotion.
Yes,
it's like, you got to have that. And it was a cool, you explained it very well. It was a very cool moment to see. I was happy to see Carol kind of achieve her full potential.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not like I was, terribly emotionally invested. I was just a guy that enjoys seeing superheroes come, be super. And so that's what I was seeing. And I was like, nice,
Yeah.
And I think that's, I said this when we first started. I haven't watched this movie since it came out in theater. I remember enjoying it in the theater, but I think the part of the reason why I've just never sat down to rewatch it again is because there wasn't that connection to it.
Right.
You do feel very disconnected from it.
Yeah, it's a very forgettable movie. I mean, you hit the nail on the head with the word disconnection. You feel very disconnected from it.
Yeah. I have to mention that in the beginning, I love, number one, that she falls into a Blockbuster. I used to be a Blockbuster employee, so I love Blockbuster. But that Blockbuster, that little shopping center was 5 minutes from my old apartment in California, pretty much. Yeah. There's a shot where Coulson calls Fury and he's like, hey, I was still in the Blockbuster, and Fury realizes
You
that
guys
the
left.
Coulson sitting next to him is a Skrull.
Mm-hmm.
In the background, you can see it had closed by the time this movie had filmed, but in the background, that was like the old dollar theater that I would go to occasionally.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah. And then when you see that he's in human form, but when you see that Skrull running across the rooftops, there's that Wells Fargo building in the background. Yeah, that was like my old stomping grounds, basically. I mean, it was it was real close to my old apartment.
That's how I feel watching Avengers 2012 and Spider-Man 3, because they were both filmed in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's right.
So when I see downtown Cleveland, I was like, that's my city right there.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fun.
Because I remember walking through the Spider-Man 3 set.
Oh, nice.
And seeing the crushed up cars with the New York plates.
Yeah,
and I remember walking through the set and forgetting that they were filming the movie. I'm like, what the heck happened here?
Right. Are we under attack?
and then I saw all the New York plates. I was like, there are a lot of New York. Oh, they're filming Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, that was like spring of 06, because the movie came out of 07, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was like spring of 06 when I saw all of that.
Nice. That's cool. I didn't know they shot Spider-Man 3 in Cleveland. I remember Avengers because you have talked about that one before, like where Loki shows up in Germany.
Yeah. So when he first encounters Sandman, and he's like sliding, he's like skiing behind the armored truck.
Yeah.
That's Euclid Avenue going straight downtown.
That's awesome.
And
very cool.
Captain America Winter Soldier, when Nick Fury is being chased by Shield / Hydra, that's the next block over from that Spider-Man scene.
Oh wow, nice. That's awesome. Very cool. This Captain Marvel scene was in North Hollywood off of Victory Boulevard and Laurel Canyon. It's kind of where the intersection was.
Yeah.
Every now and again there's actually, because a lot of Marvel movies shoot in Atlanta. And so once that chase scene happens and Fury gets in the car with Coulson to like chase them down, part of me feels like they went from LA and then there's a shot of them like crossing the street and I'm like, that looked like Atlanta. So it was like, I'm sure they were in different states when they did it.
Yeah.
There's not a train station that close in LA. So I don't know if there is a train station, and like the train station she ends up in when she loses him, that is in LA. I've been to that train station, but like when she boards the train and it's outside and it's kind of like on an elevated platform, I'm not sure. That might be in California, but I don't know. They didn't recognize that. It's definitely not very close to where they shot the Blockbuster scene, if it is in California. So it's just kind of the magic of movie making.
Yep.
But and I think I looked up filming locations. Some of this was in Louisiana too, I guess. Oh yeah, they do. They go to Louisiana, so I guess that might be why.
Oh yeah, when they find
Rambo,
Maria Rambo. Yeah.
Who, by the way, while I'm watching this movie, I'm going, man, she looks familiar. What do I know her from? And I finally looked it up, and it's because she doesn't have a British accent. I didn't recognize her, but she was in No Way to Die, or No Time to Die.
She was in No Time to Die. She's been in a lot over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
No Time to Die, Woman King.
Oh, cool.
Her character shows back up in Multiverse of Madness.
I don't remember that, but that's cool.
She's Captain Marvel.
Oh yeah,
she's the variant. Yeah, she's
right,
the Captain Marvel
right.
variant.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Yep. Yeah, I was thinking No Time to Die though. That's what I could not place her from, and it's the she had the British accent in No Time to Die. How do you feel about the flirkin?
Didn't like it. I thought it was silly.
It's silly.
Didn't like it.
The only thing I like about it is when Ben Mendelsohn is in Rambo's house. Like he kind of has first revealed himself. He's like drinking that drink with a straw, and he's all confident and blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden he sees the cat and he's like, oh god, he gets all freaked out. That was like the only moment I liked. And then he does have a funny line when they're flying in the ship and Fury's got the cat on his lap. He's like, you really shouldn't have that thing so close to you.
I agree. That was funny when they were in the I guess it would be a quad jet. It's not quite a Quinjet.
Right. Yeah. But other than that, I didn't
funny.
think the flirkin was great.
Yeah.
And then
Also, Gemma Chan is
yeah,
she's in this
Minerva.
movie. Yeah, she plays Minerva, but she comes back later and plays Cersei
Yep.
in the Eternals.
And actually, I didn't recognize her in this movie. I mean, she doesn't have like crazy prosthetics or anything. She's just mainly got the blue makeup. But I didn't.
And she has an American accent in this movie.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't recognize until the credits ran. It said Gemma Chan. I went, oh yeah. I was like, it was her. So that's kind of cool. She plays two characters in the Marvel universe, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
The Flurkin eating the Tesseract too was also kind of stupid to me.
Yep.
And then throwing it up in the post-credit scene.
You know, I got the third act on right now, and I really like how Captain Marvel looks.
Yes.
Ronan the Accuser just showed up.
Oh yeah. How do you feel about the fact that he's in this movie?
I like the fact that he's in this movie, but what they do at the end of the movie, say we're gonna come back for the weapon, and his lieutenant is like the
core.
He says,
what he calls
it, yeah, the core. He's like, no, the woman. I was like, I would have loved to have seen a movie with Captain Marvel fighting Ronan and the other Creed. Like, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
But I don't think we're ever going to get that movie.
No. I don't think so either. All right, Stu, I'm curious what you would give Captain Marvel out of 5 stars.
Well, I don't dislike the movie. After talking about it today, despite all its flaws, I can say I like it.
Yeah.
But it's on the lower end of like.
Right. Right.
So I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 quad jets.
Okay. Yeah, I looked up my Letterboxd rating, and I guess after seeing it the first time in theaters, I gave it 4 out of 5, which I think is a little too high. And so then I was thinking I was going to give it 3.5, but after talking about it with you,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you just ruined it for me, man. I think I'm going to end up giving it 3 out of 5 Tesseracts, or Flurkins. I don't know. So I'd still like it too. I think it's an entertaining movie. I could turn it on and watch it and enjoy it, but I think there are other Marvel movies that did a better job, I guess.
Yeah. It's fine, but there's just nothing special about it.
Right. Visually, it's great. And, you know, I love seeing Captain Marvel be Captain Marvel with her full powers and everything. But but otherwise it's fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, fun fact, we haven't talked about this movie yet. I'm debating on if I should even mention this and save it for that movie, but maybe, you know, you can cut it out if you want. You remember Dark Phoenix, right?
Yeah.
Remember the villain in Dark Phoenix? Those people that were shapeshifters.
Barely. Maybe. I remember Jessica Chastain being in it.
Yes. They were supposed to be Skrulls.
Oh, interesting.
And Kevin Feige was like, no.
Oh, wow.
You will not be doing that. And because I think they were using them for this movie.
Right.
So,
did Dark Phoenix come out before this one?
Yes.
I honestly can't remember. Yeah.
No?
I don't remember.
They might have came out in the same year.
They might have, yeah. I don't remember when this movie was. I guess
no, this was
2019.
Yeah, this was 2019. This is 2019.
Yeah,
I think Dark Phoenix came out in 2019. Dark Phoenix had to have come out in 2019. Yep, I think Dark Phoenix came out in the summer of 2019, and this came out in the fall of 2019.
I think you're right. Yep. So if Dark Phoenix had done it, it would have been released first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. I can understand Kevin Feige saying no then.
Yeah, he was like, they can change form, but you can't call them Skrulls. Yeah. They got to be something else. That hurt the movie. I think it would have been a little bit better. Not much, but a little bit better had they actually been Skrulls.
I think there was. I don't remember. I think there was a lot of studio interference with that film.
There was. I remember. Who directed that movie? Because I think that might have been. It was Simon Kinberg. Yeah, it was his debut. And I remember reading about him being frustrated because of studio interference. But Fox tends to do that a lot.
Yeah.
They did that with Fanforstic, which is another movie we haven't talked about.
Yeah. No, not yet. We need
I'm
to.
looking forward to talking about both of those actually.
Yeah, I have not. I've only seen each of those once when I saw them in the theater. So I am kind of looking forward to rewatching both of them. But at the same time, I remember not liking either of them, so I'm not exactly looking forward to watching them.
I've seen each of those movies thrice.
Okay.
Fanforstic, I think I've said this before. I don't feel quite as strongly about Fanforstic as other people do, and I can pretty much say the same for Dark Phoenix.
Yeah,
they're not good, but
right.
I will watch both of those movies over New Mutants.
yeah, probably. I guess we'll have to. It'll be interesting to see how we think of those movies. I am looking forward because it's been so long since I've seen Fantastic Four that I am kind of looking forward to rewatching that. But I do remember it having a lot of problems. It's a shame that the studio does that because it seems like I don't know. Who knows their reasoning, but it's studio interference just never results. I don't know if it never results. I'm sure there are movies where a studio interfered and it was a good movie and we don't hear about the studio interference. But I was going to say, usually when we hear that a movie is getting a bunch of studio interference, it never results in a good movie. It results in a muddled mess.
Well, see, the thing about studio interference, the studio executives don't know how to tell good stories. Right. They follow trends.
Right.
These movies had this actor do this thing and everybody loved it. So we're going to do the same thing in our movie.
Right.
But yeah, that worked in that movie because it served the story.
Right.
It didn't that plot point doesn't serve this story. It's not going to make sense here. Why would you do that?
Justice League is like the perfect studio interference or studio following a trend example because they wanted to lighten up Justice League and have it be Marvelized, like you kind of used that word earlier. Mm-hmm. And so who better to bring on than the guy who wrote and directed Avengers? So bring on Joss Whedon to make this movie lighter and fun and more like a Marvel movie. Right. And we saw how that turned out. And even Joss Whedon got pushback from the studio because apparently that opening scene with Batman, he wanted it to be funnier and had like more jokes in that scene, and the studio made him take it out. And so even the guy they brought in to quote unquote
I don't know how
fix
to feel
the
about
movie,
that.
I don't know how I feel about it either. I don't know if I like the idea of these, a Batman scene full of jokes. I don't, but still, it's just funny to me that the guy that they hired to bring on to fix the film, they still gave him pushback.
Yeah, that's strange to hear.
Yeah. It's kind of that, if you've ever worked retail, you know how the stuff that comes down from corporate, you realize is coming from people who have never worked inside of a store a day in their life, and you read like what they want you to do, and you go, this is the stupidest thing I've ever read or ever heard or whatever. Like you have a store meeting and they're like, all right, corporate wants us to start doing this. And you're like, what? I remember when Blockbuster was on its very last legs, I had a manager come into my store. It wasn't my store, but I was the manager on duty at the time. And he was, because Dish Network had purchased Blockbuster, and they were really pushing us to sell Dish Network television packages to customers, which I never really even attempted because that's not why people came to Blockbuster. And so this guy came in and was like, look, it's all about Dish Network now. What they're going to do with the stores is, because if you remember Blockbuster, the new releases, and this is probably every video store, the new releases went along the wall, and then like in the middle, in Blockbuster called it favorites, but it was all the older movies. It was everything that was a year older or more. He told me that what they were going to do was they were going to completely get rid of the older movies out of the center of the store. They were going to put basically like a Redbox type machine like in the corner, and that would have all the older movies in it. And if you wanted an older movie, you'd have to go to that machine and rent it. And then the entire middle of the store, the center, like, where all the old movies were, was going to be just all Dish Network stuff. And I could not believe my ears. I was like, that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. So
What's wrong with these people?
Yeah, it never actually came to fruition because Blockbuster closed its doors before any of that could have happened. But it was just insane to me what Dish Network thought. I mean, Blockbuster would have ended up closing its doors earlier if Dish Network had not bought them. But at the same time, Dish Network didn't know what the heck to do with Blockbuster. So
yeah, and since we're talking about Blockbuster, I know we all have a love for Blockbuster.
Right.
As do I. I remember going in Blockbuster with my mom or my cousin as a little kid, renting a movie, getting a box of Butterfinger BBs.
Nice. Yes.
And going home and watching The Lost World or something.
Right, yeah.
But and a lot of people say, "Oh, they should bring Blockbuster back." No, they shouldn't.
Right.
No, they shouldn't. Yeah, that's your nostalgia talking. It doesn't make any sense to bring Blockbuster back. Why would anybody want to get up out of the comfort of their home and go rent a movie to bring back to their house?
Right.
I could see doing that once or twice just for the sake of nostalgia.
For fun,
but
yeah.
To do that on a regular basis with all of these streaming services makes no sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and also it especially doesn't make sense because movies nowadays come out digitally first. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later or more comes out on physical. So it would be available for like a month to rent. Granted, it's like always like $20 to rent or something, but it would be available to rent so much earlier than Blockbuster would have it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think people do also forget the frustration of going to a Blockbuster like on a Friday night and like all the good movies are gone. You know, like you just don't get a choice. So I miss Blockbuster because it was just much more fun to me to browse especially the older movies, browse those aisles and pull the DVD case off the shelf and look at it and read the back
for sure.
and stuff.
I feel the same way I feel the same way when I buy physical media.
Yeah.
Like I love going to CD Warehouse.
Right.
And even Second and Charles, even though they're overpriced.
Yeah.
I love just going and picking up the physical item. But one, I'm buying it. I'm not renting it.
Right. You don't have to return it. Yeah.
Yeah. And two, I'm a physical media nerd. So
right.
It's like that. They would only be bringing Blockbuster back for like 4 people.
Exactly. It wouldn't be enough they'd lose money.
Yeah.
Because there are a handful of us that would go and rent movies that way. But the other thing is they were more expensive. Well, I don't know. I guess digitally, I don't usually rent digital movies. If it's not streaming somewhere, I'm not usually paying for it.
Agreed. I don't.
And I think that's a lot of people. And so I don't know how. That's the other thing. I don't know how many people would actually go to the store and drop $4 or $5 on one movie to keep for a couple days. You know. So like
when we have to review movies and I don't own it I think this may have only happened once, and that was with Ghost Rider. But if we have to review something that I don't own and I have to pay $4 to rent it, we got to do another movie.
Right, exactly.
Because I'm not paying. I'm not going. I mean, it's $4. I got the $4, but I'll be mad if I rent it.
The principle of
it. Especially if it was Ghost Rider, because now I own the movie. But that's the difference. I own it now.
Right.
I'd be mad if I paid for that movie and didn't like it. At least now, even though I really don't like that movie, I got my money's worth.
Right.
Because I have the physical copy in my hand of a movie that I will never watch again.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should wrap this episode up. We kind of went off on a tangent here. At the
you could probably cut all of that out.
Probably, but I probably won't because it was interesting. But yeah. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Captain Marvel or Blockbuster or physical media or anything we just talked about. You can always leave a comment on our website, cinemaheroes.com. You can also leave a comment on our Instagram or tweet at us. Both handles are @cinemaheroes. We're also on Threads now as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment down below. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We'd love to hear from you however you want to reach out. But I think that wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jake Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Hey, just kidding. We are we've got a little post-credit scene for this episode to talk about the post-credit scene, which we didn't talk about for Captain Marvel. Go ahead, Stu. You're the one that remembered that we didn't talk about this. So
yeah, I have a very hot take. This is one of my favorite post-credit scenes. I know it's very simple and very short, but I think the way it's done so effectively because they got Captain Marvel's or Nick Fury's pager,
right?
That is paging Captain Marvel, but they don't know what it's doing. It's beeping. It's got this weird symbol on it,
right?
And Rhodey, Cap,
Bruce Banner's
there, and Natasha. They're all at the headquarters in upstate New York. They got the thing sitting there is making all this noise. They don't know what's going on. So Rhodey comes and says, "Hey, this thing stopped making noise. We should check it out." And Natasha's like, "Okay, let's see if we can get it back on and see who's on the other end of this thing." And as soon as she turns around, Captain Marvel is right there. I was like, "Oh, okay." I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I that was the point of the scene, but
right.
I thought that it was done so well. Is definitely one of my favorite post-credit scenes.
Yeah, that was a good one. I liked it too. Yeah. And she just goes, "Where's Nick Fury?" You know, yeah. and then it ends.
Especially considering that it was leading into Endgame.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I have nothing to add, really. It was a cool scene.